This is the Honda Rebel 1100. And if you've never ridden a motorcycle before, you might be wondering, is this actually a good bike to learn on? So I have owned and ridden this motorcycle extensively, and I've been asked this question more times than I can count. So today we're going to find out, is the Honda Rebel 1100 a great first motorcycle? Or is starting out on an 1100cc bike a terrible idea? Let's find out. So this isn't a new topic here on this channel, and many of you have watched the video where I taught my wife Cassie how to ride a motorcycle, and I taught her on this exact bike. In fact, that's our most watched video. So today I thought we would take a deeper look at a question that I've been asked over and over again. Is the Honda Rebel 1100 actually a good motorcycle for beginners? I've spent a lot of time on this bike, and I've watched a brand new rider learn on this exact motorcycle from the very beginning. So I think I have a pretty unique perspective on this question. My name's Chris. You're watching Inland 208 Adventures. Let's get started. So let's start out by defining what a beginner rider is, because I think there's a spectrum here. I think a new rider is somebody who's just starting out. Maybe they rode dirt bikes when they were kids, or maybe they had a scooter that they rode around town on, but they've never ridden an actual motorcycle before. And maybe they don't even know how to use a clutch yet. So in my mind, the way I define it, that's a new rider. A beginner rider is somebody that is more experienced than that, but not quite at the intermediate stage yet. And the characteristics of what I would consider a beginner bike is usually a smaller displaced motor, maybe a 300cc motor, a 500cc motor, 250cc motor. Also, a lot of times the frames are a little bit smaller, and they're typically a little bit cheaper. You're looking at maybe $5,000 for a brand new bike, maybe even a little bit less. Now, your culprits for the bike that's designed for a new rider, your new rider bike, typically you have like the Honda Navi, which is a motorcycle that's kind of a motorcycle scooter hybrid. It's got a scooter motor in it, kind of designed like a scooter, but it looks like a motorcycle. Kind of a cool looking bike in my opinion. Maybe I'll get one. Then you have the Honda Grom, which is by all accounts a real motorcycle. It's got a clutch and all that, but it's small. It's like a 125cc. You also have your Rebel 300, you have your Rebel 500, you have, and then there's other manufacturers that make different motorcycles, but I think like Honda makes the quintessential new rider motorcycles. So when you think about your first motorcycle, usually an 1100cc bike isn't at the top of your list. And it's not for everybody, but it can be done. So as you would imagine, there's going to be some pros and there's going to be some cons to this motorcycle as it relates to a brand new rider. So let's take a look at some cons to getting the Honda Rebel 1100 as your first motorcycle versus one of those other motorcycles that's designed to be a beginner rider bike. So first off is going to be the power, right? That one seems a little obvious. This is an 1100cc motorcycle, 1083 to be exact. So the throttle is going to give you a lot more power. The bike's a lot peppier, and it's going to be a little bit less forgiving than a 125cc like a Honda Grom or even a Honda Rebel 300 or 500. Another thing to take note of would be the weight of the bike. Now, this isn't a heavy motorcycle by any means, but it is going to be 100 or 200 more pounds than some of these other motorcycles that you're looking into. So I used to have a Honda Rebel 300, and this bike does weigh more than that, and you do feel that weight a little bit more. Now, if you're going to get started on something like a Honda Grom, which is honestly a great choice, this is a lot heavier than a Honda Grom. Another con would be that the Honda Rebel 1100 is more expensive right out the gate than any of the motorcycles that's designed for a new rider, specifically the Grom or the Honda Rebel 300, or the most expensive in all the ones I've mentioned is the Honda Rebel 500. So now let's take a look at some pros to getting the Honda Rebel 1100 as your first motorcycle. So to start out with is this bike comes with a lot of standard equipment. Most importantly is the safety features. So you have traction control. So if it's raining out or if there's a little patch of gravel that you hit on the road, it's going to be a lot easier to keep your tires spinning the way you want them to versus some of the competition bikes that are designed for a new rider that is also designed to be at a price point. You also get ABS. And then you're also just more well-equipped in general. You got cruise control, you have a 5-inch TFT display that has connectivity with your phone if you need to make phone calls through your helmet, or you just want to listen to your music while you're riding. So you do get a lot more features and some of those standard safety items that you might want as a new rider. Also, we talked about the weight a little bit. It is heavier than some of those bikes that are designed for a new rider, specifically like a Grom or a Rebel 300 or 500, but in terms of a mid-sized cruiser, this is not a heavy bike. There's many bikes that are competition bikes that are way more than this. And so, and being that the weight is so down low, it's actually pretty easy to control it. Now, some of the biggest pros would be, number one, you have rider modes. We kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, but this is actually the biggest reason why you might be able to do this as your first motorcycle, just like my wife did. If you start out in rain mode, the throttle response is much more dulled. If you need to, you can get the full power out of it, but you have to really try for that. And traction control is turned all the way up. So with the rider modes, you can start with rain mode, then you work your way up to standard after you're really comfortable with the way the bike feels and the way the bike handles, and then move up to that standard rider mode. And then when you're way more comfortable than that, you can go up to sport, or you can even create custom rider modes that you can kind of tune the bike to your style of riding. And that's what I did with this bike, is I made my own custom rider mode, and I have a video all about that. So the rider modes is really the one thing that could make it to maybe this could be your first bike. Now, the next thing is that in terms of like a mid-weight cruiser, this is probably the best priced bike on the market. There are other motorcycles, namely the Indian Scout, that start out way more expensive than this bike. Even the Harley-Davidson Nightster, which is similar to this bike in a lot of categories, is more expensive. So you get a lot of bang for your buck with this motorcycle. And the third and most important of the major pros would be that you can get this bike in a dual clutch transmission, or DCT, which takes the shifting and the clutch out of it. So if you're somebody that maybe you have a disability, but you really want to learn how to ride a motorcycle, or you just don't even care to even learn a clutch, which fine, whatever. You have an option for that, and it even makes the barrier to entry for a new motorcyclist even easier with the DCT. So another couple things to keep in mind. So we've talked about the cost of some of these beginner bikes and how they're cheaper than the Honda Rebel 1100, but I want to talk about that in a little bit more detail to maybe give you another piece of perspective. So one quagmire that new riders can get into is they'll start on a really small bike that they feel that they're going to be able to learn on, let's say a Honda Rebel 300 or a Grom or something like that. They learn to ride on that, and then within 6 months, typically, they're ready to move up. So then they move up to the next size. So then they get the Honda Rebel 500. All right, that's great. And the Honda Rebel 500 is a nice bike, and it's got enough power to keep you going, but eventually you're gonna want something more than that. And maybe it'll take you a year, maybe it'll be 2 years, but eventually, I feel like this is what you're gonna get, is the Honda Rebel 1100. Now keep in mind, the starting price for this is right around 10 grand, sure, and the Honda Rebel 500 is less than that. I think it's like around 6 or 7. Honda Rebel 300's 4 or 5. But if you think about your total cost of ownership, getting into 3 motorcycles, you're going to be at $20,000 or at least close to. Versus if you would have just went straight up to the Honda Rebel 1100, well, you might be only halfway in that. So who is this bike for? Well, if you're a new rider and you're looking at getting your first motorcycle, and you've been looking at this bike is for somebody that has self-control. So given everything we talked about, right, this is a larger displaced motor compared to the bikes that are designed for new riders. And that can be dangerous. I don't want to put rose-colored glasses on it. It can be dangerous. But if you have self-control and you are somebody that is willing and able to learn on this thing and kind of dumb it down, right? Use that rain mode and really get to learn the motorcycle and how it handles and how it behaves and how you handle it and how you behave before you go up to that standard and definitely up to that sport. Maybe it takes you 6 months, maybe it takes you a year. It doesn't matter. It's also maybe for somebody who has that. I mean, that's the biggest component, is that self-control. Maybe you're a little bit more budget-minded. This could be your one and done. This could be your forever motorcycle until you wear it out. Good luck, it is a Honda. And then who is this motorcycle not for? Well, I guess it's the opposite of all that. If you're not necessarily budget-minded and you're not worried about the stair-stepping your way up to it, then great. Start out with the Honda Rebel 300. Maybe start out with a Grom. I would suggest going Honda Rebel 500 and starting there. Or if you are somebody who you're not sure that you would, when you really think about it, you're not sure that you have the self-control to keep this thing more grounded, then this is not the motorcycle for you. I would fear that this would be your forever bike for a totally different reason. So now, as a prospective new rider, I just wanted to, now that we've gone over all of that, I just kind of wanted to tell you how much my wife has enjoyed learning how to ride. And it's been over a year now, and we've done a few day trips together this year, and it's been really fun. She loves to ride to work and ride back, and I wouldn't say it's completely life-changing for her, but it's been something that she has really enjoyed, and it's been something that we have both really enjoyed to do together. And so if it's something that you're thinking about doing, whether you get this motorcycle or you get one of the other ones, it doesn't matter. Just learn to ride. It's really worth your time. So is the Honda Rebel 1100 actually a beginner bike? Well, the answer to that question is pretty nuanced. It could be, but it all depends on whether or not you allow yourself to grow into this bike responsibly and safely. Also, it could be nice just to go one and done. It definitely would be a lot easier on the wallet. So put it in the comments, what do you think of the Honda Rebel 1100 as a beginner bike? So if you're somebody that got the Honda Rebel 1100 as your first motorcycle, go ahead and put it in the comments and let us know how you feel about this bike as your first motorcycle. And go ahead and include any tips and tricks that might help others along the way. A very special thank you to all of our channel members. You guys make videos like this possible. And if you would like to join our membership program, you can hit the join button below, or you can use this QR code to do just that. Membership perks include early access to our videos, access to our monthly newsletter, and the occasional members only short. So if this video was helpful or entertaining to you in any way, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more motorcycle content just like this video right here, where I teach my wife Cassie how to ride a motorcycle for the very first time on this exact bike. I'll see you there.